Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment restores the alternative minimum tax for corporations and wealthy individuals that your bill repeals. While we need to do much more than this amendment to make sure that the wealthiest few and large companies pay their share of our security costs, repealing the AMT would be a gift directly to President Trump. Repeal would have saved him $31 million in 1 year alone. Like the Panama Papers, on which the majority has refused our request for investigatory hearings, the Paradise Papers show that major corporations and individuals like members of the Trump cabinet and many of his billionaire buddies love stashing their millions in offshore tax havens. Gary Cohn, the President's designated leader on this very tax bill, has been the president or the vice president of 22 separate Bermuda tax shelter entities. We need to stop the corporate giveaways. We need to stop the tax incentives for outsourcing American jobs abroad. But how have Republicans responded to the startling revelations this week in the Paradise Papers? The same way that they've responded to those corporations who cared so little for our country's future that they renounced their corporate citizenship charter and then, in order to avoid taxes, they defend and enable these tax dodgers. On Monday, 5.5 hours into this hearing, the committee was presented by the chairman with a 33-page amendment that no Democrat had ever seen. He would not tell us what was in the amendment, what its cost was, nor would he permit us even 5 minutes to review this complex amendment outside the committee. I believe that Mr. Levin was correct then when he called this process a mockery of the committee and essentially put us under authoritarian rule. Well, I have now reviewed that surprise amendments and the joint tax analysis of it. It is a $157 billion gift to multinational tax dodgers, particularly the big Wall Street banks and the Koch brothers who have lobbied against it. $157 billion of the total $160 billion cost of this amendment number one, presented from secret endeavors and presented without anyone to ask about its contents other than Mr. Barthold on the technical issues. $170 billion to tax attorneys to find ways to dodge things. What we see is that 95% of the Republican base erosion promises in the original bill have now been eroded by them in amendment number one. Mr. Reed, I'm not saying to you and your colleagues that have worried that your votes today about casting one vote or after another that your constituents will oppose don't care about people. I believe you do care about people. It's just that the people you care about are a little different than the ones that I view as our priorities.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Make clear how significant this $157 billion is. With the same $157 billion that is a corporate giveaway in amendment number one through all of its secret transactions, the medical expense deduction for middle-class families that Mr. Larson offered this morning, the education interest on student loans that are burdening so many students, the out-of-pocket cost of teachers across America, the adoption tax credit that Mr. Davis offered yesterday that such great interest was expressed but then voted down as amendment, the American Opportunity Tax Credit that Mr. Kind offered yesterday to help veterans and others get back in our workforce. All of those could have been included in this bill and left $1 billion or $2 billion left to spare. It is a question of priorities and it's a question of tactics. This whole approach of amendment by ambush, which is what is going on right now and why our chairman is not in his seat, to come up with additional amendments to try to patch together what's been presented will lead to more wrongs just like this, because the debate on the entire bill will close before we ever have the cost analysis or the full implications of what any of these last-minute changes do. We need to reject that approach and adopt this amendment on the alternative minimum tax.